Welcome to the Cambridge Tech Podcast, talking all things technology from the heart of the UK's tech capital. Here are your hosts, Faye Holland and James Parton.
Hi James and Faye, this is Andrew Hatcher with a quick update on a new event at the Bradfield in Cambridge. On May the 13th, we're launching the very first AI for Business event, and it is designed specifically for SMEs who want to actually use AI, not just hear about how clever it all is. So what makes this difference is that we are focusing on what works in the real world using other SMEs to show you how. We'll be sharing a live case study from a marketing agency that has implemented AI, including what they tried, what didn't work, and what actually delivered results. And then we'll go a step further. We'll introduce you to at least 3 practical demos of AI tools that you can start using this week across areas like sales and tenders and lead conversion. So you won't just leave inspired, you'll leave with things you can actually implement immediately. So if you are curious about how AI can genuinely help your business, sign up on Eventbrite. It will be great to see you there. Thanks very much.
I'm Faye.
And I'm James. Faye, what have you been up to?
It's a happy new month, by the way. So no pinches and punches because it is the 5th, but let's do it virtually because I'm nice like that. Last week, good week, really busy. It was, again, one of those weeks. I did the networking session at Impulse that I think listeners will remember. Every year I rock up at Impulse and teach the next generation of entrepreneurs what to do with regards to networking. And I just love that program. I think it's pretty much the only entrepreneurial program that I'm still supporting, but it's just got such a lovely vibe. So I did that. And then I went straight to the Business Weekly Killer 50, and we talked about that on last week's news. Martin Frost, one of the founders of CMR Surgical, was the keynote speaker. He gave a really authentic presentation. Nothing was held back from that conversation. He talked very much about how they'd moved fast and they broke things to get them where they needed to be. He gave huge credit to the importance of hiring the best marketer, which was just music to my ears. And it was really good to see Patrick Pordage to get the recognition in front of everyone that was in that room. So that was good. But the bit that made everyone laugh was, this might be showing my age, certainly, is he talked about the Morecambe and Wise sketch and aligned it to running a startup. So this is the one where they're sitting at the piano and one of them goes, oh, it's just not right. And he said, I'm playing all the right notes, but not necessarily in the right order. And everyone laughed because that is what the world of startups like. And I know you're going to come on and talk about that in a moment. Anyway, so quite a nice little segue into your news. And then, I spent 3 days in Manchester, my longest stint. I tell you what, I walk loads in Manchester.
Do you? It's a big city.
I know, but literally everyone walks everywhere. So I'm really getting my steps in. I think there's all of these other benefits to working on such a cool project. Anyway, so I had my first speaking gig. So that was interesting. I was on the stage talking about the partnership. So that was good. Up at Sister, which is a little bit like the Bradfield Centre. I feel my second spiritual home. So it was really great to be there and just meeting loads of people. And I'll put the link to the report that was released. It was interesting. It was all about regional engines for national growth. So I'll put it up on the link as well, and then everyone can take a look at it. And then, just loads and loads of work. We did our last 2 partnership roundtables. We had the 2 last sectors, couldn't have been further apart. They were defence and creative industries. But there are actually opportunities that are surfacing that can bring both of those together. So it's really interesting to see how creative we can be with the partnership as well. And then it was lovely to have a nice long weekend. That was me. So what about you?
2 main things, I think, from last week. One is I went to the CW International Conference at Hixton Hall, which was really nice to catch up with lots of friendly faces. Jen Richardson, Raoul from Anthrotech, who you will no doubt remember from our interview with them nearly a year ago. Can you believe it's been that long? So they've got some really impressive contracts coming into place. So we should bring them back on, actually, for an update, I think. In terms of the conference content, I really enjoyed the keynote from Peter Haig, who's the Deputy CTO of the National Centre for Cybersecurity. So he was talking about how AI-enabled threats are changing the world, the way that telcos are going to need to manage their networks, especially after Anthropic's Claude Mythos became the first AI model to successfully complete all 32 steps necessary for a successful capture the flag penetration test. Yeah, that's scary, but I think awareness and planning is the key thing there, right? Also, a really interesting point that because AI is so much better and faster at finding and fixing vulnerabilities, that has a knock-on effect to the way businesses are going to need to improve their patch management as well, without sacrificing stability in their systems. So lots for the telco crowd to think about.
And James, just before you go on, that whole defense conversation kind of links to what I was saying as well. And I think there's almost, like you said, it's a little bit scary. And let's use technology and try and make it in the most positive way. But I think there's almost like it's got an identity crisis at the moment because people don't want to talk about it, but they know it needs to happen. And I think actually we should probably do an episode on what it actually means and to do what we need to do for security, but also make sure we're doing the right things. So maybe that's something we can dig a little bit deeper on.
Yeah, and it was the theme of the conference as well, that where the military world and the civilian world were used to be divided, there's now a kind of a collaborative attitude where the Ministry of Defence is looking for civilian collaborations, for example, in sharing of network infrastructure and access, whereas previously the military communication networks were completely locked down. Now they're looking at how they might use things like 5G, 6G, low orbit satellite networks and all these kinds of things just to enhance the propositions. So yeah, there's definitely some ground to cover there. My secret project is now not secret anymore. So we launched in Cambridge at the conference. So what is it? It's really designed to be a one-stop shop to help founders set up in Cambridge. And it's really took inspiration from the conversations I've had with founders over the years on their experiences of setting up in Cambridge. In parallel to the pressure of growing their startup, they have the additional pressure of thinking about UK company structure and formation, taxation, accountancy, legals, banking, fundraising, workspace, social and business community connections, finding somewhere to live, somewhere to send their kids to school. It's obviously really overwhelming. So this proposition is really just designed to try to help and address that. And I'm really pleased of the group of local experts that we've brought together. They really are just like the cream of the crop in Cambridge. So it's us at the Bradfield Centre, it's Mills and Reeve, it's Cambridge and Peterborough Combined Authority, it's PEM, Barclays Eagle Labs, Move to Cambridge and Cambridge Wireless are the initial launch collaborators. So I'm hoping that's going to really make life just a lot easier for startup founders looking at Cambridge as an opportunity. So if you'd like to learn more or are interested in joining the group as a service provider, just ping me on LinkedIn or visit bradfieldcentre.com/launchcambridge.
No, that's brilliant. Just that sheer list of things about all the pressures of starting a company that you listed, that in itself is the reason to have new services and new options for people to help them land a little bit easily. So brilliant. And yeah, let's keep a watching eye on that and see what we can do. Maybe we should do one of those as an episode too.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I think that's everything from us, isn't it, in terms of updates? So shall we move on to the news? First story this week is Over STEM, which is dedicated to accelerating inclusive innovation across the Oxford to Cambridge Growth Corridor, has been launched. The Over STEM Summit is where STEM community leaders come together to collaborate. It's conceived as a multi-zone festival of ideas and brings together an innovation showcase, a pitch arena, academia-led collaboration spaces, and high-impact learning exchange, all designed to remove barriers, accelerate partnerships, and turn conversation into action. In addition, the Overt STEM Awards celebrate the people, the teams, the organisations that are driving STEM forward across the growth corridor, with 22 categories spanning education, innovation, inclusion and leadership. The awards spotlight excellence and inspire the next generation of STEM leaders. Overt STEM's founder, Mia Chandler, says Overt STEM exists because the talent is everywhere, but opportunity isn't. We're building visible pathways and tangible opportunities so people across the growth corridor, regardless of their background, can thrive and lead in STEM. This isn't just an event, it's a movement. So that sounds a very important thing to publicise.
It does. It's a lot of movement for starting here in Cambridge, aren't they? Next of all, on awards, and there is a new Cambridge Science and Technology Torchbearer Award that has been introduced to the annual Business Weekly Award. And this award will honour a company whose commercial success is inseparable from measurable societal value. Delivered by Innovate Cambridge in collaboration with Cambridge Innovation Capital, the award aims to encourage a next generation, a next wave of startups and scaling companies who embed societal value into their business model from the outset. So Catherine Chapman, who's Innovate Cambridge Executive Director, said, "We're proud to introduce this new award as part of the Business Weekly Awards, recognising a new generation of technology companies redefining what successful innovation looks like. Cambridge has long led the world in scientific and technological breakthroughs that have changed how we think and how we live. This award highlights those companies showing that innovation can and should strengthen the communities in which it operates." And you can apply for that award by finding out more information on the Innovate Cambridge website.
Great. Our next story is Cusp AI. That interview with Cusp is coming up very soon, so stay tuned for that. They've notched another major coup through an alliance with global giant NVIDIA to address molecular simulation. Now, apparently molecular simulators are the backbone of drug discovery and material science, but they're notoriously complex. The pharmaceutical industry, for example, spends 15% of its revenue on R&D and more than 20% of the total R&D spend across all other sectors combined. And molecular dynamics is one of the heaviest computational lines in that budget. Ian Buck, Vice President of Hyperscale and HPC Computing at NVIDIA, said, "We've been working closely with the Cusp AI team to help push the boundaries of GPU-accelerated molecular simulation." So congratulations to Cusp, and we can't wait to bring you that interview with Debbie.
And our last piece of news is from Cambridge-based tech company Kigan, who has raised £10 million to accelerate the next phase of growth in the EU and US as enterprises strengthen cybersecurity resilience for the era of new regulation and investment in AI. Vincent Costange, CEO of Kigan, added, "We're excited to join the high-caliber portfolio of companies backed by Salica. This investment allows us to accelerate our next phase of growth with confidence. Our customers are looking for practical ways to strengthen cyber resilience, simplify regulatory readiness, and manage secure connectivity over the long term. This funding helps us move faster to support them with trusted, future-ready solutions."
That's the end of this week's news, so let's now move to today's episode.
So today we're joined by Rafie Faruq, co-founder of Genie AI, which is a company using AI to transform how legal contracts are created and negotiated. So Rafie, it's great to have you on Cambridge Tech Podcast with us.
Great to be here. Thank you, Faye.
So, Rafie, we always like to start by getting to know our guests a little bit better. Could you walk us through your background, your early kind of path, how you found your way into tech and entrepreneurship?
Sure. So I've been a lifelong programmer at the age of 13 or 14, creating websites in HTML and PHP. But at university, I wanted to learn more about the world. So I read philosophy and economics to get a sort of broad brushstroke on the world. Then did what all my peers were doing and became a trader and joined the dark side. Portfolio of over £1 billion at the age of 22, which was quite a lot of responsibility quite early. Traded with the Vatican, believe it or not. But then I wanted to get back to doing something that A, had a tech focus, and B, had a positive social impact. And so that's why after running a further business, I then went back to do a master's in machine learning. Lucky enough to be taught by Google DeepMind at the time. Wrote my master's thesis in generative AI 9 years ago, and then started Genie off the back of that master's thesis. And yeah, Genie's mission is to empower everyone to agree with confidence when it comes to legal contracts.
So Faye will jump in and talk more specifically about the product. That aha moment, did you have an experience with the law that kind of triggered or spotted the need or the gap in the market? Did you have the technology idea and you were looking for a problem to solve? Which way round did that come?
Yeah, we were the wrong way around. So we had the tech. There's a video of me 8 years ago speaking about how generative AI can generate text and contracts, legal contracts end to end. And that was before GPT-2, I believe, maybe even before GPT-1, before the current language model explosion. I believe we were the first generative AI company in legal, but it was a tech insight. And then we obviously had to speak to hundreds of lawyers and the industry to really validate the problem. what then inspired me is the fact that law firms tend to sit on all these past contracts, all this past knowledge. And for every new deal, they just, but they make a few tweaks to these template contracts and they're selling it for tens of thousands of pounds. And we just thought, this is ridiculous. We need to create some kind of legal brain that can read way more knowledge than a law firm and produce the result way cheaper and way faster.
So the idea then is to reduce the reliance on lawyers by using the technology?
Pretty much. It's democratizing expertise. And what we're really selling is trust. Now anyone can go on GPT and ChatGPT and ask for a legal contract. But we recently released some benchmarks showing that Genie outperforms GPT and Claude on public benchmarks that we've released by quite a lot. On one benchmark, GPT got around 48% and Genie got around 86%. So that's the kind of difference in legal quality you're getting.
And just delve a little bit deeper then into the effect what you're doing is going to have on the legal industry.
Yeah, I think the big question is always jobs. And I do think jobs are going to be lost in law firms. And we shouldn't beat around the bush with that. I was lucky enough to be on Sky News 2 years ago talking about this. And the presenter asked me 3 times in a row, what's going to happen to jobs? What's going to happen to jobs? And back then I was a bit more vague, but now I'm perhaps more blunt. And I do think jobs will be lost. That said, we're also partnering with Lord Way at the House of Lords and a company called Make a Life to create a training program for lawyers to upskill and retrain into AI lawyers, which we're calling trust engineers, trust architects, people who set the rules and standards for the AI to operate automatically. So there is still a role for lawyers. It just will change. And that's what we're trying to enable.
And I think that's the important bit, because I go back a few years, everyone was talking about, we won't need lawyers anymore, but we are still using lawyers to the same extent. So it is that transition, but all technology is there to redefine jobs. So I think it's really interesting that you're already looking at tackling that as well.
I moved into legal AI to try and do something good and positive for society compared to perhaps trading. And I do worry sometimes whether the AI boom is net good. And so this is an initiative to offset maybe some of the job losses. And we're publishing this training program on the Genie website, hopefully later this year, which will be publicly available. And it's not something we need to do, but it's something that we want to do for the benefit of society.
Can I just ask a supplementary question to that before we move on to maybe delving a little bit deeper into the tech? It's fascinating to hear you describe that, because I'm guessing in the early days of the company, you had a decision to make, because it sounds like you could have built a tool for legal professionals that just does a better job of unlocking all of that insight, and they could have used that in-house to improve productivity, but you chose a path to go and compete directly with the legal profession. So talk us through that kind of choice and why you took the latter route.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. In the early days, we did work with the big law firms, mostly to gain knowledge, understand the market, but also due to pressure from investors. But again, I left big banking, not to go into big law, but to try and do something that changes the world. So we quickly pivoted to serving the end customer. And it is harder. Many of our competitors have gotten quite big. You may have heard of Harvey AI, Legora, by serving the big law firms. But in the end, the bigger markets is actually all the end businesses. And we feel we're making a bigger difference in the world by serving that mid-market business rather than the big players.
Okay, no, that's admirable. So you're also working at this intersection of law and AI, and we've had a lot of AI startups on the podcast, as you'd expect. So let's get into the weeds a little bit. How exactly are you using AI to really drive the proposition forward?
There's actually so many ways. It's a hard one to boil down. But if I try to categorize the sort of key areas, the first thing I'll say is we just released a patent pending architecture called Eidetic Intelligence. And it's this type of intelligence that's outperforming Claude and GPT significantly for legal tasks. We can essentially handle big multi-document legal transactions. Imagine if you're a construction company building a commercial development, you need to have 20 to 30 subcontractors. There's probably a main contractor. There's lots of different parties involved. Now, if you put 30 documents into Claude or GPT and your policies, your templates, and all your company history, 100 other documents, Claude and GPT will fail. It can't handle that context length. What we've done is we built this architecture called Eidetic Intelligence, which memorizes all your past knowledge and information. And in doing so, it personalizes the outputs, but it can also operate over unlimited context length. So it does that by compressing the information into a knowledge graph and having a legal quality gating so that every decision is high quality despite the compression into a knowledge graph. It's probably a lot of words, but in short, Genie can operate over unlimited context length, unlimited documents and project size, whilst maintaining a really high level of legal quality.
How have you trained the model to perform like that?
Yeah, so that's pretty much the creation of this knowledge graph plus legal quality gating. And it's something we've just submitted a patent for as well. But we essentially anonymize your company knowledge, documents, policies, how you tend to create legal contracts in your business, your typical risk threshold, your negotiation behavior when talking to clients. And then we distill all of that into a knowledge graph that can be used to train the models at test time. And yeah, this creates a highly personalized output, which in turn enables quality.
Technology moves fast, and now so can you. Discover Polestar, the all-electric performance brand vehicles redefining how we drive. Precision engineering, minimalist design, and software that evolves with you. Experience it at Holland Group in Norwich and Bury St Edmunds, or let us bring the test drive to your door. Proud sponsors of the Cambridge Tech Podcast. Polestar, electric performance redefined. Discover at holdengroup.co.uk/Polestar.
You described their complex structures and ingesting history. Does that imply that you're targeting more of a corporate enterprise customer, or are you agnostic to the kind of people that could you use this in buying a house or doing a more kind of an individual kind of legal requirement, like a will or something like that?
Yes, you can use it for individual requirements, and we do get many people doing that. We have quite a generous free tier, again, to allow individuals to use the platform as a benefit to society. That said, it's not our target market. Our main target is enterprises, mid-market businesses, and typically those companies that are more project-based. If you're creating a construction project, an energy power plant, if you're a consultancy, then you'll have more contracts and more of a variety of contracts to do.
Okay. And I guess my final question before I hand back to Faye, and you must get this a million times, like how do you build the trust in relying on the AI to perform these tasks that you typically be paying a lawyer to do?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked, and you're absolutely right. This is the biggest question. This and the question of is the market, especially lawyers, afraid of what you're doing? The two biggest questions we often get. But on the idea of trust, it's pretty much releasing public benchmarks on our quality. And we've just released this. Anyone can test our system against the benchmarks. Anyone can test their system against our benchmarks. And you can compare against GPT and Claude. And like I say, we're performing sort of 40 to 50% better than GPT and Claude. We believe this is the best in the market for legal quality on complex legal tasks.
Thanks. That's really interesting, just going through a little bit about the sector and what you're doing. So what I would like to do now, Rafie, is talk a little bit about the company journey. So what's happened since you've founded, how you found team development, those types of things.
Yeah. So we're about 35 people now. That said, and I guess this is all relevant to the world now, but the unit of work has been decoupled from the amount of people. So actually smaller companies are in many ways performing a lot better than big companies with the use of agents and so on. But yeah, it's been 8 years of running the company. We've, between Series A and Series B, very lucky to have investment from Google Ventures, Coastal Ventures. Coastal were one of the first investors in OpenAI. So yeah, it's been a journey and lots of ups and downs.
So your comment there was interesting on employees and the model actually changing. Do you see a future where you're going to have that split between agents and humans? How do you have any kind of forecast on how you would handle that?
Yeah, we're already seeing it right now. Our company structure, our job roles have completely changed. And when people's job roles change, that is the thing that is most emotional and most challenging typically. So it's something that we've really carefully monitored and communicated about. Essentially, what's happening is that before you need cross-functional teams to deliver a service or a product. So you might have an engineer, a product manager, a designer, a marketer. But now you have one person that does everything, because where businesses slow down is where you need to collaborate, which sounds sad because I'm advocating for less collaboration, but that's the reality of where teams slow down in terms of organizational efficiency, where you need discussion, interfacing. Yeah, things slow down. The fastest teams are teams of one. And what's happening now is everyone is being an autonomous end-to-end team. Everyone's doing the work end-to-end via agents, and no one's doing work. We're just managing agents to do the work for us. And typically you'll have 5 or 6 agents on different screens, just doing the work, half-an-hour projects for you at a time. And that's the way things are going.
I think I've long been an advocate of the generalist. And actually, that's the kind of model that you're talking about. So actually someone who can go across all of those things and can have the visibility, I think we're going to see a lot more of that moving forward.
No, I'm just going to reflect that, Faye, your experience is really diverse as well, right? Marketing, entrepreneurship, many different companies. Yeah, I think it really suits this kind of expert generalist. Whereas it's interesting, in the past, I feel in the workplace, specialists were more favored. I'm curious if that dial is going to shift towards generalists now.
I find this so fascinating. It feels like in the last 6 months, we've had a number of conversations with founders of early stage businesses. I know you're not early stage, who have outwardly said the company wouldn't exist without using AI in terms of automation and just the reduction in people necessary to build the company. It feels to me, I haven't fully baked an idea on this yet, but it feels like the transformation we went through compared to building a startup in the first .com, with the advent of cloud compute and all of the kind of cost savings that brought, not having to build your own infrastructure, that was revolutionary. And it feels like we're now into that next wave now where companies are being built using AI and not in traditional ways. Are you seeing that in the conversations you have with other founders?
Yeah, for sure. I think you're absolutely on the money there. I think we get autonomous companies pretty soon. You might have agents just running their own companies. So there's an idea called the agent economy, which is coming out now, which is the economy that is agent to agent and not really no humans are involved. The interesting question will be, where do humans interface with the fully agent world, which will far outgrow the human world? Yeah, what is our role in that?
And on the engineering side of the business, are agents writing production code for you? What kind of oversight have your engineering team got?
Yeah, absolutely. Our engineers are not writing code anymore. It's fully agentic, but it's not as simple as just putting in a one-word prompt. There's actually now whole processes around how to architect the agents and the sub-agents so that they're accurate. There's guardrails. They reflect your business policies, your safety policies, and that they're bug-free. There's a whole new job role around architecting all of that. And that's the role now rather than doing the work. But that's just new work now. So yeah.
Yeah, I feel we're teetering into a whole episode on its own here because I mean, it's really fascinating stuff. But I do want to bring it back to what you mentioned earlier on when we started talking about the growth of the company, and that was your funding journey. So as you've said, you've been very fortunate. You've got some extremely strong backers behind you. What was that like? Was it because you'd already got a relationship with some of them, or how did the funding journey actually manifest?
Yeah, it's been quite interesting with us. I've never been particularly on the ball with reaching out to investors. My approach is more just build something valuable and hopefully investors will come. So I don't know if we've been lucky or not, but Coastal Ventures found us and reached out to us. And then through a fairly long process, we gained their investments. And then Google Ventures came off one sort of random meeting a year before. We got along well. And then when it came to raising a year later, we just talked to them, and it was quite a quick process. Within 3 weeks, we had closed. Yeah, it was quite close to the end of our runway, so it was cutting it quite fine, but that's always the way. But yeah, my general approach is not so much to keep tabs on lots of investors, but rather just build something that's worth investing in.
Yeah, and that was the comment Christian Segerstrala made at Cambridge Tech Week last year, and actually the subsequent dinner. He always says, just build something brilliant and people will come knocking, rather than constantly thinking about, I've got to raise capital, I've got to think about what my exit is. So yeah, that tallies quite nicely.
Yeah, it's just the boundaries of what is good and worth investing in has completely changed as well. Now, these AI companies are going from 0 to 1 so fast that the expectations on startups have completely changed as well.
You're building the company in London, but you're obviously from Cambridge. So talk us through the kind of decision of how you split time. Do you have plans to put boots on the ground in Cambridge, or are you going to be London moving forward? And maybe more broadly, as the second part of that question, have you had an opportunity to spend time in other kind of tech clusters, and can you compare and contrast UK versus other places?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, primarily based in London, and most of our employees they live in satellite places near London, but we also have a good bunch in Cambridge as well. And we love working from there when we can, booking office spaces there. We also sponsor Cambridge United Football Club, and they also use our software. So very much involved in the ecosystem. I think Cambridge produces really well-rounded individuals. I think the educational system and the culture there is really well-rounded, very scientific, very technical. Where it might struggle perhaps when we compare it to, say, Silicon Valley, which I also spend a lot of time in because our investors are based out there, is the aggression and perhaps even the arrogance. And that's feedback I had from our investors quite a lot, actually, is that I'm too nice, too polite. And they want to see someone more aggressive. And at first I thought feedback was a bit silly. I think socially it is a bit silly, but to be fair, we have seen companies in our market grow and explode because there's some perhaps bolshy, arrogant founder that is just hyping the company, even though they have no product, but the market is not smart enough to know that they have no product. So the hype becomes real. So that strategy is actually a viable strategy and it does work. That's the kind of sad part of doing business perhaps, but is important.
To find balance, isn't it, between being hungry and showing that you are and being gracious. I do think it's a little bit of a British thing to be more gracious and reserved. Maybe we should start a training course on being more aggressive, but I'm not entirely sure that's a good thing.
Yeah, again, there's no question that the capital is more free flowing from the US. So I guess that you have to align to some degree their expectations in the US, but I think there's definitely that mid-Atlantic best of both worlds, isn't there? Where that European, a little bit more measured, a little bit more thoughtful, maybe.
Yeah, I love talking to Europeans and doing business with them. But it must be said, I've been lucky enough to collaborate quite a lot with government in the last month or two. I was at number 10 Downing Street a couple of weeks ago, talking to Keir Starmer's AI advisor. And also there was a new all-party parliamentary group set up just this week for innovation and startups. I was with a number of MPs there. And all the conversations that I'm hearing in government is they want to procure AI startups. They want AI startups to progressed fast, and it is a political issue now. But the procurement culture in the UK is just really defensive. In the US, if there's value, people will try you out. They'll just pay money and try it. In the UK, it's a lot more around data protection. It's a lot more defensive.
Yeah, but at least those conversations are starting. And I guess it goes back to what you talked about earlier on. That's almost your social responsibility to make sure that you are literally knocking at the doors of number 10 Downing Street to say, if you want us to succeed and stay a British born and raised company, then you actually have to invest. You have to make procurement easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're hearing good things at the top. I was also at a press conference with David Lammy 3 weeks ago at the Microsoft AI conference. And he kept saying that the government should be procuring AI startups, should be procuring, and was overly pleased to name one startup that they piloted with in the last few years. But it doesn't flow down very well into, especially local governments, and all of the departments in central government are all, as we know, quite disparate and lots of bureaucracy and all the rest of it.
Just before we move off this kind of topic, around this kind of cultural acceptance of risk and being a bit more experimental, have you seen that kind of cut through into your early customer base as well? Have you seen more adoption from US companies versus European companies?
Yeah, about 35% of our client base is US, so fairly significant. And then a third is UK, and the rest of it is global. They tend to be in financial hubs. A lot of the Middle East, actually. They're quite big on big contracting projects. But yeah, US just tends to be a bit faster, but also more value oriented, whereas Europe and UK, a little bit more relationship based. Yeah, we do get a lot of international clients because the platform is multi-language, multi-jurisdiction. So we're quite strong on the international cross-jurisdiction contracts.
Am I right in guessing it's like a typical SaaS style playbook where it's self-service and anyone can just sign up and get going?
Yes, exactly. We do have a sales assisted motion for those who have high usage of the platform. They can upgrade by talking to us. But generally, just try it out for free and then hopefully upgrade.
Brilliant. So what's next, Rafie? What are you excited about happening in the next year or so?
Yeah, the whole game has changed now. Every 3 months, there's a seismic shift in capabilities because of AI agents. And the product is improving so fast, and we're seeing the uptick in our numbers as well, which is good. But practically speaking, where we're going, high personalization. So the issue with generalist LLM platforms is that they don't understand your company context in great detail. So really understanding the company's legal policies, frameworks is one aspect. The second aspect is building what we call deterministic negotiation flows. So again, AI platforms are great for probabilistic flows. Do everything different however you want it. But in legal, you need determinism, you need rules, standards, and processes. So building out these playbooks, review policies, negotiation flows on Genie is a key priority. And the final thing is we're moving into a world where people might not even look at legal contracts in future. It's hard to imagine, but what will enable that, we believe, just knowing the key issues and risks and negotiating those key points is the new interface for contracts. And so enabling humans to do that and delegating the rest to AI is the direction that we're going.
It's been a fascinating conversation. Just as we wrap up, what would your top piece of advice be to someone, a founder in an AI company today?
I would think about workflows, not cross-functionally, but linearly. So can one person do entire workflows end-to-end, entire job roles end-to-end? Everyone just has to think in terms of people, but in terms of agents, which, I realize there's maybe a sadness to that, because what does that mean for society? But I think what it means actually is not that less people will necessarily have jobs, but you just have a way more one-person companies. So the game is basically how far can you stretch a one-person company? That's the current game and the way everyone should be thinking.
And that in itself is quite an eye-opener. If you think about the investment landscape, the way that we do things, that's a completely different model. So that'll give our listeners something to think about for sure. Rafie, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great having you on with us today. Where can people go and find out more about what you're doing?
Sure. So Genie is on LinkedIn. You can search Genie AI. You can search myself, Rafie Faruq, on LinkedIn, or if you want to follow me personally, also on Instagram.
Perfect. Thanks for being with us, Rafie.
Today's show was produced by Joe Donaghy of Cambridge TV and supported by our media partner Business Weekly. The Cambridge Tech Podcast is available on all major podcast platforms and on cambridgetechpodcast.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please give it a 5-star review. It'll really help others discover the show.